every state, as far as I know,
Yeah.
has some sort of cottage law program, which is, a food registration. Here's mine right here.
Welcome to the Charcuterie Launch Lab podcast, where passion meets profit. If you've ever dreamed of turning your love for charcuterie, or food of any kind, into a thriving online business, well then you're in the right place. We're Andrea and Patty, the Grazing Biz Sisters. With over 60 years combined experience as a chef and digital marketer, we have walked in your shoes starting our own online businesses. We'll share all of our tips, advice, struggles, and best strategies to help you launch and grow your own online foodie business with ease. The Charcuterie Launch Lab is a space for all food creators and entrepreneurs just like you. Let's dive in and get your yummy business launched online, one board at a time. Hey, welcome to the Charcuterie Launch Lab podcast. It's Patty and Andrea. We're back. In case you haven't noticed, we're in the same clothes we were in the last one because we were recording two in a row. Hey, just so you know, both of us have grandchildren, so we're juggling sometimes our grandchildren and the husband who isn't mine's retired, and then when he's not here, I try to get stuff done. So I try to record when he's not here because he's loud in the background. So this is going to be a little shorty podcast today. We're going to talk because we are talking about trying to get you launched. If you're new to this business and you want to, you're just having fun creating boards, and now you're thinking you might want to take the next step of getting it out there. So today we wanted to chat briefly about some of the licensing that you might need to be aware of, and food requirements. Obviously, depending on the state or the country that you're listening to us from, which I hope you're all over the world, that would be awesome. You need to look into your local, licensing requirements. But Andrew, what kind of licenses are we looking at first? Like, as far as, first of all, can anybody usually just go out and start handling food without
So,
some sort of something?
yeah, so what I understand, almost every state will have this situation, which is where you are basically treated as a personal chef. Okay. So when you do a personal chef business, what happens is the steps are, and this can apply to charcuterie businesses, the steps are you would have to go buy all the stuff that you need for, let's say, the charcuterie board. So you go buy the meat and the cheeses and whatever, and at your local store or wherever you're going to buy it. And then you take it directly to the place that you're going to put this board together. You're going to have all your equipment with you, or you're going to use their equipment. Preferably in this circumstance, you actually want to use their equipment just to keep out of trouble, but it's okay to bring your own. But then you get there, you put everything together, and that's it. You're done. And
Okay,
that's
but
treated.
okay, so is that a licensing to get a personal chef license, or
Crazy
what? I
enough,
mean,
yeah, crazy enough, at least in Arizona, you don't need a license to make that happen.
I
However,
don't need
if
food handlers experience, no understanding how to clean, wash.
nope,
Okay,
from
so
what I understand, but I'm not going to encourage people to do that simply because you're better off being informed. You're better off having that information on your website saying, I have this license, whether it's just simply a food handler's license, so you can do the personal chefing. There is typically nobody who follows up on these things unless, as far as the government
somebody
goes,
gets sick.
unless somebody gets sick.
Yeah.
And, so just to be on the safe side, and plus you're going to need insurance at some point and we will be talking about that somewhere down the road as well. But in
Well,
my
we are going to
case,
talk about it because I think it's important right now that people know if you need to start understanding having insurance to protect yourself is like a number one. So no matter what, and I'm just going to follow up with what you just said. I think it's important that you do this, that you don't,
Mhm.
and it's not to just put it on your website. It's really so you understand that you can't just go from the bathroom to the kitchen, right? And
Right.
without washing your stinking hands, right? So because I spent 17 years as a paralegal, I'm going to really protect, myself and you, that you really need to know that there are laws and regulations to handle
Right.
food if you're going to share it with the public. And so, although it's possible, you probably could, I mean, just go and do what Andrew
Yeah.
just said. I just don't
No,
think it's
I would never
smart.
encourage. anybody,
Yeah.
yeah, I would never encourage anybody to do otherwise
Right.
for that reason. It's just better to be over-informed and have
Right.
over-information for everybody. And I don't think anybody would hire you anyways if you didn't have,
Yeah. Right.
some kind of credential showing that you know what you're doing.
With
We're
that.
not, yeah, you just want to be.
So what about just creating the board at home and then taking it? What's going to be required if possible? I know every state now, again, I want to reiterate,
Mhm.
every state is going to be different. Maybe the counties, maybe your city, honestly, that because they may not allow you to run businesses out of your subdivision. So your subdivision might have an issue. The only one that probably turn you in would be your neighbors, but understand that if you've got people coming in, picking up stuff from your house, people are going to start getting suspicious about, she running a business out of that house, right? So you got to go every level within your state, but it's not as
Mhm.
hard as it is. You just, as it seems, you just have to know, like figure it
Yeah,
out for where you're
know.
at. But there's
Yeah.
that. But then is it legal to make boards in your house? And what do we know about Arizona? Like we know Arizona, for instance, as an example.
Right. So what we know about Arizona, and these laws have just recently changed because we do have a lot of people on the streets, on the corners selling what tamales and burritos.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they recently came up with what we're calling here in Arizona, just as slang, the tamale law, which is part of the Cottage program. So every state, as far as I know,
Yeah.
has some sort of cottage law program, which is a food registration. Here's mine right here. Let's see,
Yeah.
how do I get it on there?
Yeah.
So, it's just a food registration. They do, in our case, it's free, but you do have to pay for the food handler's card, which is part of the registration. I only paid like, I don't know, $10 or something for the food handler's card.
But you had
It
to take
takes
a
a little bit
test.
of time.
Yeah, you take
Yeah,
a little test, right?
so you go through a course and you take a test at the end. They make sure that you
Yeah.
know what you're doing, like the washing of the hands and then keeping everything sanitized and what temperature does everything have to be at and stay at. So in our case, the cottage food registration law has changed. So we can now make, for example, a charcuterie board. I can make it in my kitchen. I have to store it based on the food handler's, information, being in
Mhm.
that danger zone of food, which if you do a food handler's card, you'll understand what that means, and keeping everything the way they tell you to do it. And then you wrap it up and you deliver it, and it doesn't get touched in the meantime. It just gets wrapped up, everything is secure, and then you deliver it and drop it off, and that's where it gets unwrapped.
Mhm.
So that's our laws here.
Right.
Most cottage laws in most states will not allow you to do the charcuterie boards in your business, in your home,
Because it's perishable.
because it's
Right.
perishable and they want to make sure that everybody's safe. So with that said, that doesn't mean we can't go back to that personal chef situation where you make the charcuterie board at the person's residence or business,
Hmm.
which is okay. It's totally okay and it's totally doable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take any more time than what you would be
Yeah.
spending doing it somewhere else, doing it even in your own kitchen.
Right.
You would go and purchase all the products and then you go and you cut everything up and you put it on the board in
At the
place
location. Yeah.
at the location.
Right.
So,
So another thing I want to bring up about the cottage law, though, too, is that every law is going to be different, obviously, but there is limits on how much you can earn in some of these states. In Arizona, there is a limit on how much you can earn. So as in the cottage, when you're using your cottage license, I
mhm.
can't remember exactly how much it is, but you have to be aware of that because there are regulations on that. And there was another regulation I was going to talk about on it. I can't remember what it was. But just make sure that if you're going to research it, which obviously you will, what if the cottage law will actually work for you in your state to get a cottage registration certificate, right? For what you want to
Mhm.
do, right?
Mhm.
But I do like the idea of being able to go to their house and do that or their location. What if it's like
That's one
a
way to start. That's
yeah, it's
one
a
way
good
to
way to
start
get
a
started.
business.
Yeah, without
Yeah.
having to worry about, all that. Now, insurance, though, because you do still want to have that insurance. I was surprised to hear from you that the insurance wasn't that expensive. I thought it would be, what was it,
Yeah.
like 25 or
It-
45 a month or something like
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
And what
the
does it
cheap.
cover? Liability? in case you make some
Yeah,
sense.
I want to say it covered 3 million in damages if something happened. But,
Yeah, it depends on your
the
coverage.
great thing about charcuterie, if you're sticking with that, I mean,
It's
people
already
are taking.
mold. It's already
Right.
moldy.
So, exactly. But charcuterie is like taken to a whole nother level when they want to they call charcuterie boards,
Everything.
somebody delivers a bunch of hot dogs on a thing with
Yeah.
buns and whatever. They
Yeah.
call that a charcuterie board. In theory, that's a whole
Taco.
nother story for us, a whole nother topic. It
Yeah.
is not really a charcuterie board. That is what I would call catering.
Yeah,
So
right.
there's two different sides to that. Anyway, we don't want to go down that rabbit
No,
hole
but
because we,
it's something
but
there's just something to know because there's a lot of
right.
people want to make these boards with all
We're talking
these
about
different
cheese
things on. Yeah. And
jelly.
as far as the way that you're storing it in your house, oh, let's talk real briefly about the difference. Like if you didn't do it at home, but you could get a commercial kitchen, but you didn't want to buy a kitchen or you didn't want to rent a full-blown kitchen, there are facilities out there and companies out there that actually will help you, find a temporary type place that's just for on the hour basis, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you could actually go into a neighborhood restaurant that that doesn't open up during certain hours and see if they'd be willing
Right.
to let you go in there, like a little deli or something along those lines. But you've
Hmm.
got this issue about storing the refrigeration, like the refrigeration side of it, because you're not going to be schlepping that home and then bringing it in. So you're going to have somewhere to refrigerate this stuff, right? Because that's the biggest thing. You really only need it for this business. Am I right or wrong? All you really need is a counter and a refrigerator and some
Right.
knives,
Oh,
right?
you got to be
I
able to, you
mean,
got to
you're
have
going to
the
need other
cleaning.
things, but as far as the kitchen goes,
Yeah. I mean, again, we have to keep going back to this because I don't want to get myself in trouble
no,
about the whole, cottage law and different health department laws. But with that said, it's a very basic setup. You don't need special tools. You
yeah,
don't need special anything to make this happen. And you just have to have the knowledge and the creativity to do
yeah.
what you want to do. It's not difficult at
Right.
all.
So as far as spent
Requires
a huge expense to get started, that's one of the reasons I thought this was really intriguing because I don't
no, you
think
don't
there's a
touch.
massive expense required to get off the ground, and you don't need to go order everything until you have a sale, right? So
Right.
and
Right.
then you can buy the things and not necessarily use everything that you purchased or in that one board for that person. And you could make more than one board. While I'm on the subject, because we're talking about refrigeration, can you freeze cheese? Is every cheese freezable?
It can, but not every cheese is freezable. Some
Yeah.
will I'm sorry, some will lose an enormous amount of integrity by being frozen.
Yeah. Probably same thing with the meats and things too, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah. After a
so
while. Yeah.
it's always best to try to organize yourself around, you know,
Right.
around whatever you're purchasing. The great thing about it though is that cheese and meats,
They're cured.
the
Shelf,
cured ones have a very long
shelf life.
refrigerated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you learn how to wrap things up, especially the cheese seems to be the most perishable, but really there's some great ways, that we'll talk about wrapping them up in different types of, not plastic but paper and
Oh,
things like that that will keep it longer in your
longer
fridge.
in your fridge. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't
Uh,
want to keep anything for more than a week or two, but point
right.
is, if you don't wrap it right, even a basic,
Right.
cheddar will get nasty in a few days.
Mhm.
So,
So
yep.
to get back on the legal side of this too, is like you don't have an LLC. I do have an LLC for my business, and I've done it to protect myself financially, probably more than anything else, because you can file your taxes, and I'm not going to get into what is good idea for anybody, but there are different tax levels that come into play as a result of the type of legal like tax registration you have. So you could, like I'm an LLC, so I can file under like a sole, not a sole proprietor, sole S corp. And the S corp actually is better for me financially, tax wise. So that's the other thing I'm just going to say is make sure that as you're getting yourself started, you want to look about health, you want to look about insurance, and you want to look about the best way to set your business up so that you are, saving as much as you can tax wise if you're going to start really making money. If this is something you really want to turn this into a major business for you, that's going to be really key. So make sure that you talk to a lawyer and or CPA, or just you do your research. Maybe you know enough about it and you've already got a business going, and that you've got stuff set up. But anything else? I guess the other part I would say is we've talked about liability insurance, but there's other insurance too that you could get if you're going to be out driving around and you're going to deliver.
Yeah.
If you're going to have employees, workers' comp insurance, those kind of things. But again, if you're just starting, which most of us are, who are going to be here probably, or are trying to grow what they've got, just make sure, I think, really that you've done your research on these major things. And again, I don't think any of this is like going to cost you an arm and a leg to get this stuff. Your license, you just said $10 to get your cottage thing.
I want to say it was like $12 to get the food handlers thing. They want people to be legal and knowledged. They're not, granted, all states are trying to make money, but at the end of the day, in my case, this cottage thing, I couldn't believe it. I got on there and it was like, it's free. Holy crap.
Yeah.
But they knew you were going to have to pay for the food handlers, because in order to get the cottage license, you had to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right. There was a little bit, but I wouldn't call it scheming in any way. I would expect to pay something. And then, of course, we roll into, taxes. When you say taxes, sales taxes. So that's a whole nother thing, which is called
sales taxes. Yeah, there's that. Right. Exactly.
In our state. So you want to, again, just do your P's and Q's. And I think we should put together just a simple checklist on that. I don't know if we've done.
No, well, I've got it in a webinar that we're going to be rolling out. So I do have it broken out, but I don't have an actual downloadable item, but we'll put that together for sure.
We're going to get there.
Yeah, we can get that.
Another thing
to sit down, and actually it'd be a great thing for you to start working on what we're talking about.
I know.
Because there's so much of it is like food related that not necellely is in my wheelhouse, but my stuff's more business and online stuff to get set up.
We need to put together a
checklist
for the health department for you to look at, so these are the things you need to look at. And all I can do is give you the information. And again, every state, every county, sometimes it's down to the county. So I think like New York State, because there's so many people, they break it down by county versus state. So, it just depends on where you are.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think I hear a grandbaby waking up in your background. So not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's getting close.
He might have heard me the other day. I was cooking something and I made a bunch of racket and woke him up really early. And I was like, stop. Heard him screaming.
Stop cooking in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, we're glad you're all here today. We've got I just want to reiterate that if you're looking to get some extra help, make sure and join our group, Start Your Charcuterie Business and Facebook group. Also, we've got a couple of free resources for you, a really awesome charcuterie calculator, and also a charcuterie ChatGPT board builder prompt. So we're going to put all these in the notes for you, so you have those. Feel free to access that stuff. And, we're here to give you as much advice as we can. And we are getting ready to roll out some amazing tools to help you. And so we're glad you're all here, and stick around and do not miss another episode, because we got more to come. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.